At one point then, when I was in junior high, probably about 8th grade, I began to think about the church and God. And I think before that, it was sort of part of the household week. That's what you did on Sunday. I began to think about, because I was going there on Sunday and on Sunday night and volunteering on Wednesdays, and I mean, it was really part of my world. And after confirmation, where we were made, you know, to learn all this catechism, and I realized I hardly understood what the whole thing was about. We didn't have very robust Sunday school. It was, and certainly not the kind of thing I associate with friends that were Lutherans when they were going through, you know, or more evangelical traditions, because we were, you know, it was coming and taking the sacrament and the singing and the liturgies that were important, and then the children's things were social. But somewhere along the way, in those breaks of studying, I think the catechisms and for confirmation and other things, I began to wonder, well, what is this God all about? I'd read enough stories and books, and I liked science, to know that I didn't think he lived up there. I didn't think, you know, the clouds were his super bed, mattress. So I go to make an appointment with the rector to go and see him. And it was one afternoon, I remember after school, and I went to him, and he wasn't a particularly warm person. He was all right. I mean, you know, it wasn't scary or anything. And I asked him, I said, you know, what would you say if I told you I had questions about what the nature of God is like? And he just looked at me. He finally started talking after about a minute. And he said, well, you know, how can you expect to understand any of that? You're just an average kid. And I was so taken aback by that. I think I got angry later. Mm-hmm. I think it was just so surprising that he would say most people don't understand what God's about, and yet they keep coming back every Sunday. And I found that pretty amazing. I didn't understand about culture and what, you know, and particularly in the 50s, everybody's expected to be religious or have a religion or something. Funny thing was, I did not tell my parents that I had gone to see him and what they had said, what the priest had said. And I think I was kind of ashamed in a way that somehow I had gone and done something inappropriate. So I just hid it, and I just pushed it down. And then I went away to college in Austin, the University of Texas, and I remember one Sunday being struck, and I remember it was in the old, I think it was in the before the Revised Prayer book came out, about if you had not come to church in time to really confess and to say everything that you had did and kind of gotten right with God, then you shouldn't go up and take Eucharist. So I began to think, well, I probably haven't been right with him since I began to doubt him. And I felt then this was very hypocritical.
Of yourself.
Of myself. And probably sinful. Because certainly I had this idea that you were going to be judged that way if you went and availed yourself of the greatest thing the church has to offer, and you didn't really believe. I came to Milwaukee with my husband after he was hired to teach at UWM. In the meantime, my husband had met a priest named Bill Coates. You've got to meet this guy. This guy is really dynamite. And he comes to a place called St. Mark's on Sunday, and he helps. And his family comes here too. And then he does services on like Wednesday nights and occasionally other times over at this rectory that he lived in, or whatever they call a chaplain's home. And Bill Coates was the campus chaplain for UWM. They also provided him with a place to live. It was the old summer home of the governor, and he had this kind of church-like setting on the first floor. It's a mansion, and you know, a place where we could meet, and there was a place where they could have services, and then upstairs he lived with his wife and 2 kids. He said, let's go over there on those Wednesday nights. They have a lot of some of the professors and just some people in the community that have been really kind of turned on by him. I said, okay. So we went. So my husband was so enthusiastic and got me to come with him on to these Wednesday night services and little talks and stuff. And I noticed that there were college kids there too. So I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Kids from college, you know, and they seemed to hang around a lot too. And so one afternoon, I had been very interested in what he was doing, with sort of non-theological time he had. And he said, well, I've been doing a lot of organizing. He began to talk to me about how on other days of the week he met with a lot of these students, and they picked out as their first thing tenants and the problem that students and other tenants had with landlords. There was a festival that was on Brady every summer, and they had started having a booth. And it was the organization that they decided to call it was the East Side Housing Action Committee, or ESHAC. And they, you know, built posters and did the things that new organizers did. And the thing that attracted everyone is they would let people pay, I think it was like a nickel or something, in a big fishbowl and vote for this list of the worst landlord. So they did that kind of thing, and then decided that while sure there are problems east of the river, it was west of the river that really had most of the problems. And that's when Cross the River, or River West, was at the bottom of what the housing stock looked like, businesses, things. It was really in sad shape. And I got in at about that time when they were beginning to make a sort of pirouette over the river. And we saw that the businesses, like the grocery store, having one that was decent was really important for the community there. You know, when you don't have a grocery store, except maybe one, you know, that sold cigarettes and bologna, you figure out, I don't live in any place that's really worth anything, or nobody else thinks it's worth anything, not even an investment in a grocery store. So we got involved in the co-op movement, which was also around here, not part of us. And the co-op movement here loaned us money, and we basically bought it, but with their money, Gordon Park, the grocery store, and named it the Gordon Park Food Co-op. We had some pretty wild ideas. We did get range-fed beef, mainly because we couldn't get any other big wholesaler to deal with us, but we got these guys from up north. In the meantime, I had joined VISTA, which is like the Domestic Peace Corps. We had a cooperative legal system from a lawyer who'd come from Madison and was working at the public defender's office. And then we had a little law practice there where people could pay like $10 a month and then they could get legal help if they needed it. That went on. You know, we were experimenting with things that somehow could change people's ways of thinking about how you live. And if you could just get yourself together with other people, could form some institutions that would make your life better. And so I decided that I would go and talk to him. Kind of one of those things by myself, didn't tell my husband, like the very first one. Maybe I thought, you know, if I don't like what I heard, then I just keep it quiet. So I went and met with Bill, and he used to come over and do a service, which mostly women that didn't work outside the home, which I was not at the time, did on, I think it was like Thursday near lunchtime, and then ladies would meet and we'd have, you know, lunch and stuff. But I made an appointment to talk to him at the rectory in the late afternoon. And I told him of my utter incomprehension of how God could be the way they describe God, and how the fact that I couldn't kept me from taking Eucharist for years because I thought it was hypocritical. I didn't deserve that. I thought, well, it's okay to come to church, you know, because God wants everybody to come to church. But it wasn't right that I would take the Eucharist, which particularly, you know, here it's just the crown of the liturgy, the most precious jewel. And he just looked at me and he laughed. And I thought, oh my God, he's laughing. I didn't think this was very much of a laughing matter. And he said, don't you know, God's just reeling you in. He's got you. And he wants you. And he's going to bring you in. You deserve to take the Eucharist as much or more so than anybody else I know. And it's going to be a great comfort to you to take that, and it will feed your faith, even though you're not exactly sure, you know, about all the things that make up that faith. So after that, the next Sunday, I thought, well, here's this priest that I admire that seemed to have a great biblical base and knowledge and an understanding of what was going on in the world, and he said it was fine. So I took it, and I've taken it ever since. The fact that I was very involved in the community then made coming to church and participating in the Eucharist with everyone else and receiving that same, to me, what I think of as the great comfort and challenge, became so important, because while I saw how important it was for people to come together in the world to get anything done, that coming over to church, what brought us all together every Sunday was coming up and accepting the Eucharist and getting that comfort, and then getting that challenge at the end of the service about go out and serve God, live out the Spirit. It all just seemed to be so parallel and so self-enforcing. Well, I think it symbolically and actually brings us together. I remember where was it? Minneapolis, I think. I was in a church in the Round. People tore off a piece of bread and fed it to the next person. And then the cup came and they gave them that, and then that person gave it to the next person, and they all went around. And I thought that was glorious, because it was like being at the Last Supper in a sense, you know, being together, partaking symbolically and actually of sustenance. And that sustenance is spiritual sustenance, which is every bit as important as physical sustenance, which we need to have too, but it just reminds us that we are human communities, and we have weaknesses and we have strengths, and there are ways we can share and grow stronger together. Community is so important to me. I just can't imagine living outside of this community. And the Eucharist is, it's just like feeding is so essential to people staying, you know, and being able to stay in a community because we've been able to get enough food to keep us together. That is what keeps us together spiritually, or it keeps me together spiritually. And it also reminds me that, because I go up there and I may be among all sorts of different people. I don't sit in the same place every time. I sit by new people or old friends or someone I haven't seen in a long time, and take that to get together with them.
Let us go forth into the world, rejoicing in the power of the Spirit.
Thanks be to God.